Alright, let's get started creating our Power Automate flow. So we're going to click this and we will go to Power Automate, and I usually say CR flows because I want to start it different. I don't want to use a template. So I'll click See My Flows. From here, the top drop down New Flow, I'm going to create an automated cloud flow. And I'm going to call this Teams Provisioning Demo 3. I'm going to want to kick this flow off when an item's created. So I'm going to select that and then click Create. So we're going to do this in a few steps. The first step, we'll just get the list created. We'll write some simple information back to SharePoint that in the active field, just telling it that it's been provisioned. And then we'll extend the provisioning into a little bit more detailed with contacting graph and also writing back those fields. Alright, so the first step we need to do is go and grab our site URL. We won't need this window. And we're going to put in a custom value because it's not going to show up in the drop down. So I'll paste that in, and now we'll get a list selector of the available list, and we'll pick on projects here. We'll go New Step. We're going to leverage some of the Teams preview connectors here. So I want to now create a team. So I'll type in create and click on create a team. And we're going to be using some of the information from the SharePoint list to create our team. So for our team name, we'll use the short name. And for the description, we're going to use the title field, which is the longer name of the project site. And here you can choose if you want your teams private or public. We're going to be just keeping these public for this demo. Okay, so now we'll click on New Step. We want to go and add our members and our admins. So we're going to use a control, apply to each, because the fields that we have people coming into are multi-valued. So we're going to need to apply to each item in that field. The first field is members. So we'll find the one which just says members. So this will be the members field coming in from SharePoint. Now let's add an action where we add a member to a team. Again, all these Microsoft Teams actions are going to be in preview. So from the previous step, this will generate a Teams ID, and we're going to use that in this drop down here. So we'll need to have a custom value, and this will open up the little expression and dynamic content panel. So the dynamic content meaning something coming from a previous step. The created team output will be this new team ID, so I'll click that. That will add it. And now for AAID, we'll use members emails. And for the advanced options, should the members be an owner? So these are just going to be regular members, so we're going to say no. And we'll add a new step. This will also be another control, so we're going to basically copy the step above with apply to each. And in this field, we're going to use admins. So click on admins, make sure I don't type anything else in there. And for this, we're going to, again, add a member. We'll use the custom, so sometimes that thing will pop up and get you. Enter custom value, new team ID, and we're going to be looking for admin's email. Now we want these to be owners of the group. Great, so we have our two groups there. We have our teams created, and now the last thing that we're going to do in this step is update the SharePoint item with active. So we'll create a new step and we'll say update SharePoint item. We need our list or URL again. Enter custom value. Paste that in there. Now we can pick the projects list. There's going to be some required information, the ID and the title. We're going to use this from when an item's created. So we have our ID field here, and title, well, we have that here. So we're basically sending the information back in the update of item. Now we want to make sure that we set active to yes. We're not going to change any of these other non-required fields. If we leave them blank, they won't change whatsoever. And you can see our other site URL and our project site URL. So before we move on to the next video, I'll just show you why we can't just write back the URL and why we need graph. If I wanted to use some of the information that came out of the team, the only thing that comes out of the create a team process is the new team ID. So we don't have the URL. We then have to take this team ID and send this off to Microsoft Graph and ask Graph, what is the site URL of this team? We're going to do that in the next section, taking this up just one step further. Again, so the same thing with the project site URL, but the reason why I created those different, just to show you in here in the flow, is that the project site URL, even though it's a hyperlink, it shows up as looks like a single line of text, and this is a single line of text. So we have to do something special to write back hyperlink fields in Flow as well. So we're going to do that in the next video. So as of right now, we have our team created and our site set to active, and we're going to save this. And we're going to run one test. So we'll click test, and we'll say manual. It means we're going to manually trigger this flow. It's going to load the waiting screen, which is this. It's waiting for me. So I will go here, and I'm going to say W1, W1, right? I'll add some members just to make sure, just to validate everything is working. I'll type in one of my visitors. I'll put in 2 of them so we can get this tested out of the way. And we're eventually, when we go to the Power App, we're going to hide all of these fields so that the users can't interact with them. But for right now, we're seeing them because we're just first getting set up. Going to now jump over to our flow and wait for it to process. And what should happen is once it's successful, we should get this as active. So our flow is running, and we can see now, and this is automatically updating as it's going through. Created a team. You can see what happens when the team got created. Here's what we're getting back, our new team ID, which we're feeding into the next steps. And we're also applying, the members. So we can see we have 2 of them there, and we had 1 of the admins here. Now it's a good idea to rename each of these steps. Gives you a better idea of what's happening within them, but we left them as default. And we're going to write back to SharePoint. So it's going to write back, and this is just some of the data that's going back in JSON format. And let's just go back over. It should say active down at the bottom. Let's go back to the list, and this will automatically refresh, but let's refresh it. So now we have active yes. So we know that a team site was created. We can see it was successful in here. I can go to the team site to verify. I'm not going to do that. It's been all green, so we know that everything's been good. So in the next video, we're going to add in Graph, and I'll show you how to make the HTTP request to Graph and how we set up our Azure Active Directory to facilitate the Graph calls in our flow.